Now, when it comes to power in My Hero Academia, we don't need to look any further than Deku. From the beginning of the series to today, he's been gaining power almost non-stop. There were of course bumps along the way, but he's seen increased raw power, techniques, and even just support items. This man has just continued to grow stronger. There is the obvious growth in One For All, however, there's something more strange that's been going on with little to no acknowledgement in the community. Something that makes it possible to know all of Deku's future quirks, and we'd just like to have a discussion about it. Now, to do so, we'll be diving into recent manga events among other things, so if you're not a manga reader and you don't like spoilers, proceed with caution. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor and turn on notifications to never miss an upload. We upload almost daily and would love to have you participate in our discussions. With that said, let's get into this strange growth Deku has been going through since the beginning of the series that allows us to know the future quirks he'll unlock. And yes, this has been going on since the beginning of the series, and at first I don't think anyone thought anything of it, and rightfully so, it makes sense. But we've now reached a point where it's worth thinking about and shouldn't be ignored. In the manga currently, we're in the middle, or rather what seems like the end, of a war. Gigantomachia is going night-night thanks to a sedative created by Momo, and Shigaraki isn't really functioning anywhere near his norm. In fact, neither of the two characters are in any position to pose a threat. At least that's how it seems, and I'm just making sure to say that in case in the next chapter either of them goes off and turns the tide of the whole battle. Prior to ending up here though, we had Deku facing off against Shigaraki in a very dangerous encounter. Shigaraki's decay ability alone has the potential to kill all the heroes with a single touch, and on top of that, he now has All For One. Shigaraki at one point was ready to try and end this battle with decay, a terrifying situation for any ground-based hero, when right then and there, it happened. We saw Deku use Black Whip and a new quirk, Float, to save everyone. Now, up here in the sky, Deku would put the work in on Shigaraki, and that's great and all, but we would also get a flashback. Where back at UA, Deku would request the help of Uraraka, Bakugo, Tsu, and Sero. They would help him improve his abilities with Black Whip and unknowingly prepare him for Float. Now, this was a fun flashback. We got to see Deku interacting with his classmates and having a good time, but we can't forget it was also a little dark with the mysterious truth about One For All. It was during this flashback we saw Uraraka help Deku prepare for his similar but different quirk. Again, they're similar, not identical. After all, while Uraraka and Deku can make themselves float, Uraraka also has the ability to make other things and people float. But in a way, this felt like inadvertently making Uraraka less relevant. Deku is now able to do half of what her quirk is able to, and to be clear, she's not now irrelevant. Her power is still of use to the story, but giving Deku some of her power makes her simply less relevant. And it continues. Black Whip is essentially a better version of Sero's tape quirk. Black Whip can hold up tons of weight, and its overall application possibilities are greater than that of Sero's, again making him less relevant. And I remember when Black Whip was first introduced, a lot of people were saying the quirk wouldn't be that good and that it wouldn't be better than Sero's, but after seeing it in action a few times now, I think we can all agree it's pretty damn good. Sero was never going to play a big role through the story, let's be honest, so making him less relevant isn't too big of a deal. And if he's your favorite character, no disrespect, I'm just speaking my truth. But again, it continues. When Deku was having issues with his arms, he switched to using his legs. And I really shouldn't say issues because I mean it was much worse than just issues. Issues sounds like a strain or a bruise, but those arms were basically one smash away from becoming dust. But I digress. Deku responded to this obstacle by inventing shoot style, a more leg-focused fighting style, and to do this he needed help from Ida, a fellow classmate who just so happens to fight with a style like this. Granted, Deku didn't unlock super speed or grow engines in his legs, but he grew in a similar direction again to one of his classmates. Just like how he didn't exactly get Uraraka's quirk, he got an aspect of it. He's becoming more like his classmates. And you might be thinking, well, that's only 2 cases. But no, it continues. In the most recent chapter as of this recording, chapter 293, Deku copied another classmate. In a desperate attempt to save Shoto, he used Froppy style Black Whip, shooting Black Whip from his mouth once his arms and legs were unable to do much for him. First of all, this just looked hilarious. I mean, come on, just look at it. But second of all, I can't lie, it makes sense. I mean, he has a history of his arms and legs failing him, so why not have something else to rely on? And it worked, so I can't hate too much on this decision. That is now 4 classmates I've mentioned, and by now I'd like to think it's clear this isn't just a coincidence. Deku is in fact taking something from all his classmates, whether that means an aspect of their quirk or fighting style. When I mentioned earlier that this has been going on since the beginning of the series, I'm referring to his core fighting style coming from Bakugo. This was shown in that first fight where Deku was teaming up with Uraraka against Ida and Bakugo, which now feels like forever ago, and now, for me at least, it's starting to feel somewhat nostalgic. We've reached that point in the story where the beginning feels nostalgic. But yeah, there were a few key moments in that fight, however I'm referring to that one big moment where Deku grabbed Bakugo and slammed him on the ground. Bakugo was super pissed that Deku had known so much about his fighting style and even used it against him. Much simpler times, but still great to look back on. With Bakugo added in, that is 5 classmates he's now copied. And at this point, I see no reason to believe the list won't grow. There are of course a good amount of classmates left, but if we take a few factors into consideration, we can basically predict what will come next. The first parameter we'll set is remembering what Bakugo said when he saw the list of quirks. These guys didn't really have any strong quirks, and he included Lariat's Black Whip when he said this, meaning any quirk left to be unlocked is something Bakugo would consider lame, meaning nothing too flashy or similar to his own quirk. Next, we need to remember that the quirk itself will have a key ability similar to at least one classmate, but most likely 2. Finally, it's likely that the quirks will be related to the more popular powers we're familiar with from Western comics. For example, he has super strength, he can float, basically fly at this point, and Black Whip, which is similar to the webs in Spider-Man, a character Horikoshi is fond of. Now, let's get started. The most obvious choice we see is some sort of sixth sense, in line with the spider senses in Spider-Man. Deku has taken real damage in this story so far, and instead of only being focused on dealing damage, it's about time, especially after this conflict, that he learns how to dodge. He learned how to punch, he later learned how to kick, and with this quirk would come dodging. The classmates this quirk would be relevant to are Shoji and Jiro. Shoji's quirk Dupley Arms allows him to transform the tips of his tentacles into other parts of his body, for example eyes and ears. This quirk has a variety of uses, however we're focused on the additional perception it provides. With a sixth sense, Deku might initially feel overwhelmed by how much he can sense, in fact he definitely will. And being mentored by someone who's able to sense more than the average human is perfect for quirk training. As for Jiro, her quirk Earphone Jack allows her to do a variety of things. However, what we're focusing on here is her ability to hear the more minuscule sounds and vibrations around her. Again, Deku would be sensitive to things he's never experienced, and what better way to train than working with someone who's always dealt with this sensitivity. This quirk would be cool as hell to me, but remember Bakugo would have to consider it lame, which I believe he would due to his lack of flashiness. Up next, we believe that we'll be seeing some sort of projectile quirk. What would be projected is too much to speculate on, as we would have no grounds to stand on there. However, this quirk would require help from Mineta and Aoyama, possibly Kaminari as well. Once Deku adds in dodging to his list of abilities, it would be nice to have a ranged option. After all, his end opponent will be Shigaraki and the quirk, all for one. Mineta's quirk Pop Off allows him to produce and pluck ball-shaped things from his head. They grow back and are sticky. While not a projectile power in the traditional sense, Mineta does throw them, and this requires high accuracy, something Deku will certainly need. As for Aoyama, his quirk is Naval Laser, which shoots a sparkling beam from his navel, a quirk that again requires high accuracy to be effective. These two, along with Kaminari potentially, would be the mentors for Deku and his projectile quirk, and again it wouldn't be anything too flashy, but I'm sure it's something we as the fans will find cool. Up next, we believe Deku will get a telepathy quirk of some kind. This quirk would be mentored by Koda, and wildcard here, a member of the Pussycats, Mandalay. The Pussycats have come up in the story a couple times now, and I believe they'll continue to do so from time to time and stay relevant. Koda's ability is to speak with animals and give them commands with its quirk, Any Voice. And Mandalay can communicate with humans. These two together would be amazing teachers for some sort of telepathic quirk. It is possible Mandalay won't be present, but instead Deku will consult with his notes about her, but I believe she'll somehow be relevant in his training. With those 3 quirks, Float and Black Whip, there is room for one final quirk. We're going back to the basics on this one. Deku will obtain some sort of Hardening quirk. Not identical to Kirishima's, but it might be, for example, animated energy that protects his body, or something like iron, etc. None of the quirks have been identical to the classmates, but very similar, and I believe that would be the case here. Kirishima has the ability to harden his skin with his quirk Hardening. If there had to be another student helping with this quirk, I believe it would be Todoroki or Tokoyami / Dark Shadow, characters good at taking a hit in the best way possible. This quirk makes sense because even if Deku's body is able to be restored by Eri, we would want to never see him reach this point again, and some kind of hardening quirk combined with a sixth sense like mentioned earlier would be the key to preventing this physical state from ever being reached again. Before we go any further with this discussion, I'll give myself some insurance here by saying if that whole Kirishima Bakugo time travel theory in any way ends up being true, and their quirks are in One for All, that would handle the hardening aspect of this theory and the emitter aspect. Remember, not much is known about the second and third user. All Might couldn't pull up anything on their quirks, so it's very likely that the two flashiest quirk out of the list I've discussed are in fact hidden. If Bakugo saw a quirk similar to his own on that list, he wouldn't have gone and said they're no good, and his respect for Kirishima might hold him from saying that as well. So the list of quirks Bakugo did in fact see were not flashy, but the two he has not seen are the flashiest kind, potentially, one of which being his and the other being Kirishima's. The idea for the prediction of the future quirks only helps the Bakugo and Kirishima theory because dodging, sensing, and telepathy are all in the eyes of Bakugo lame quirks, but we will still need an emitter quirk and a hardening quirk, something those two have, and something conveniently missing from the list of quirks Bakugo saw. I am very excited about this video because I believe in some way the contents of it will end up true in the near future. What do you guys think? We would really love to hear your thoughts on all this in the comments. Would this stack of quirks satisfy you? Would you feel like Deku still has too much in the end, or is this perfect? You might have noticed there are some characters not mentioned in this video, for example Ojiro and Mina among others, and that was on purpose. The remaining characters not mentioned will likely in some way be able to help with an existing quirk or one of the future ones, with the connection not being so clear, for example how Furopi ended up being tied to Black Whip in some way. What do you think about the fact that Deku is essentially becoming Class 1A himself? Does this hurt the relevancy of the other characters to you, or is it just great seeing all these members of the cast be able to play a part? Again, be sure to share your thoughts on all that in the comments. We'll be going around hearting our favorites and joining in on the discussion. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please be sure to drop a like to both let us know and help the channel out. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for plot armor to never miss an upload. And if you'd like to go even further in your support for us, do check out our Patreon link in the description. Until next time, keep that plot armor on you. I'm KJ, have a great day, goodbye.